Hello folks, Sinow here. I hope you're all enjoying the launch of Lost Ark, which is now finally out here in the West after years of waiting. I wanted to show you guys a little interview that the director of Lost Ark, Gold River, did over on an Amazon Games hosted Twitch stream right before the launch of the early access period in the game. He did an interview with Amazon Games and he said a couple of things that were quite interesting pertaining to the future of the game or some of the development that I thought you guys should know as we dive into the world of Arcadia. So let's take a look, shall we?
Players and longtime fans alike. So chat, make sure to ask your questions. We'll be pulling them when we can. And I am so very honored right now.
All right, here we go. Here is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Gold River. What a name, by the way. Look at him. He's so, like, unassuming. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you saw this guy walk by you on the street, you wouldn't think he was the head director of, like, a multi-million-dollar earning MMO.
It is an honor to be here today. I will do my best to answer your many questions. Thank you.
This is so cool. They've got like the Iron Throne from Game of Thrones almost going on here for him, like pulling out all the stops. Also, massive respect for the fact that he's speaking in like a secondary language for himself to an audience of like hundreds of thousands of people. Like, major respect. That must have not been easy. Can they please sell this Mococo lamp, by the way? I really want this bad boy over here.
굉장히 운명적이다 이런 생각 좀 해봤고요.
The interesting thing is, if you shorten Lost Ark, it's also LA, so I think that's a beautiful connection right there.
Hey, this means a lot though that he's actually come all the way to the US for the launch of this game, you know? Like, he's very involved in this. This isn't just something that Amazon is like publishing it and they don't really care kind of thing.
이런 것들을 조금 질문에 좀 많이 넣어달라고 요청은 드렸었거든요.
And as I have requested with Amazon Games as well, not just to talk about the flashy parts of the game, but also address any of the concerns that you all may have. So that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, this guy cares, you know what I mean? He really cares. It means a lot.
Everyone is so excited to play Lost Ark this week. And there were a lot of people who were very excited to play Lost Ark in 2021. Could you give us some insights behind the delay that delayed
the
us
game
here
was
to
delayed. No, I thought they delayed the game because they were launching New World at the same time.
I'd first like to address, we were supposed to meet in 2021, but because of the delay, I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to everyone for the delay.
Oh.
It seems like there's been a debate in the community saying that it may be because of the new world.
It's not because of New World.
Okay.
That's really interesting that he's immediately wanted to respond to, like, a lot of us all at the same time when they announced, pardon me, the delay last year. I was like, Amazon's not going to release two MMOs at the same time to compete with one another. So I was fully convinced that the delay was because they were launching New World at that time, which, as frustrating and as much of a disappointment as it was, it kind of makes sense. Like, I get it. Any business wouldn't want to release two products that compete with each other at the same time. So it's interesting to hear that he says it's not because of New World. I wonder what he's going to say now.
이런 부분들을 AGS 아마존 게임스에 제가 요청을 드렸었고요.
Well, of course, in the original Korean launch, Legion raids had yielded great responses. So I particularly made a request to Amazon Game as well for that Legion raid to be included.
So Legion raids are kind of like the more classical raiding content you might be used to in MMOs. In this game, it's like 8 people most of the time doing quite hard content.
그 시간에 쓰기 위해서 이제 연기를 한 거예요.
So because of the tier 3 that will be included with the Legion raid and taking a bit of time with the localization of the content, it yielded some more time than expected.
그렇게 공지를 안 하더라고요.
But it seems like when Amazon Games made that announcement, they didn't include any of these details in their announcement. So.
제대로 전달을 했으면 좋았을 텐데 하는 좀 그런 아쉬움이 있었어요.
And because of that, it seemed like Amazon Games did all the work to make this happen, but yet didn't, reveal any of these details behind the delay. So it got me a little frustrated.
Wow, that's super interesting. So, like, the reason that they delayed the game is because he wanted raid content to be an our version of the game from the very get-go. So, like I said, the Legion raids in tier 3, which is like the most recent tier of kind of content that has come out in Korea. It's interesting that he says that the delay was because of these reasons, but Amazon didn't announce this at the time. I wonder if Amazon wanted to go for like the kind of surprise drop. You know that thing that like a lot of it online like marketing is done recently where it's just like Beyonce just released an album out of nowhere with no press about it, you know, that kind of thing. I wonder if Amazon was going for a strategy of just like, we're going to launch, or we're going to surprise people that tier 3 is in the launch of the game, but not tell them until it's like nearly out, so everybody like freaks out about it. But it must have been frustrating for him to see all the feedback of people being like, why did you delay it? This is such a disappointment.
Do you at this time have plans for future updates and rollouts that you can share?
There's a big one, yeah. Because we're technically a bit behind Korea still.
굉장히 빠른 템포로 계속 업데이트를 해드릴 거예요.
For this launch, we have 15 classes coming. And every 2 to 3 month intervals, we're going to introduce a new class as well.
2 to 3
그리고 또
months.
이제 뭐 군단장
So that's
레이드
pretty
이
frequent.
부분도
But there are some classes that are missing from our version that I know that some of you were hoping to be able to play. So it is a little disappointing.
꼭 이게 빠르게 엔드 콘텐츠를 막 많이 공급하는 게 꼭 좋은 건 아니거든요.
So we have a ton of updates for you all. But in our opinion, given our experiences with our original launch, perhaps pouring out all of the updates at once may not be the best option.
뭐 그래서 준비
We're already getting like a ton of content as well. Like it's already pretty overwhelming as it is. Never mind this other stuff.
선보이도록 하겠습니다.
So with our speedy updates all available, ready to go, we're still going to take time to monitor the progression levels of our users, of our global users, and release according to that level of speed level.
I love how my man Gold River, he comes out, just sits on his like iron throne looking like $1 million. All of a sudden, straight into the interview, like really detailed stuff about like endgame and things like that. I love that because an interview like this, I'm sure there might have been some pressure perhaps to like lowball it with the questions and be like, you can enjoy our brand new MMORPG with 15 classes to play from. And it's like, no. When Gold River is talking about his game, he gets into the details, you know what I mean? They're not really like pulling any punches here. Why was the game delayed was like the first question, you know what I mean? Like that is actually amazing. The transparency for a game developer and seeing what he personally thinks as well about like, I wanted Amazon to tell everyone why it was delayed, but they decided not to. Like the transparency, this is huge for me. So many games, like you wish the developers would communicate with you a little bit more, and having Gold River himself just as like one single man stand out as the director and just tell us all this stuff, I love this. I really love it.
You might even say, stop the updates. Be prepared.
That's a lot of content.
I love
like there's
all
so
the
much
content
content in
we
this
can
game.
expect here. Gold River, I probably should have asked you this first, but do you have anything to say to the new players out there who might be diving into Lost Ark for the first time this week?
군단장 레이드는 꼭 도전해봤으면 하고요.
For those who prefer vertical contents, then I would for sure recommend diving into Legion raids.
섬이라든가 아니면 뭐 여러 가지 컬렉팅이라든가 이런 것들 전부 다요.
And for those who like to take their time exploring the game and enjoy some of the horizontal contents, then we recommend just diving into not only just side stories to item collection, and there's so many things available that you can enjoy.
That was a great answer as well. Like, so for those of you who don't know, vertical and horizontal content is kind of like design philosophies about how content and player power levels are experienced in MMOs, where vertical is like you get stronger and then the things that you were doing previously, you like outgear them and you outscale them and they get super easy. So it's like you do like a harder raid, you get better gear, and then the gear allows you to do harder stuff and the old stuff gets easier. Whereas horizontal is like, maybe when you collect a lot of stuff, you might get like a potion that increases like your ability to craft, or you might get like a small stat buff that makes your character overall better, but it's not like super like, oh, my item level's gone up by 300, so now this fight's really easy kind of thing. Lost Ark actually has quite a lot of horizontal content, whereas like, for instance, in World of Warcraft, I think one of my criticisms of World of Warcraft is that it's so vertical that stuff becomes outdated sometimes really quickly, and a lot of the game feels like dead. It's something that in recent times MMOs have trended towards more vertical content, but then when like a new expansion comes out, all of the previous expansion stuff just like dies immediately. And I think Lost Ark actually has a really nice mix of the two, so this is a really cool answer.
I want to ask you, I've heard about Loa-on and its popularity in Korea. Are there plans to do anything like that here or globally?
So Loa-On is like their fan fest from Final Fantasy. It's like their BlizzCon where they get together and it's like a celebration of the game. They do some performances and then they announce like big updates coming up in the next year or so. It is my dream one day, chat. I'm not streaming right now. I don't know why I said that. Force a habit. It is my dream one day for you viewers out there to be invited to or to go to a Loa-On. That is my dream. So hopefully one day I can look back in this video and be like, I did it. I hope so, but I'd love to go to one of these. Yeah, so you can see some footage of it in the background. They're on the stage and people are dressed up and it's like a sort of live event. Oh, I really want to go to one. It looks like fun.
로아운도 될 수 있고 뭐 아니면 대회가 될 수 있고 이런 것들을 많이 열어보고 싶긴 합니다.
So since our Korean users have already seen some of these versions that our Western users will now see, once that meeting point is achieved, then perhaps we can have a global event.
So basically, the Loa-On is a little difficult because they'll be announcing things for the game, but we're a little bit behind. So for instance, they announced the Painter class for the specialists, the specialist class with the Painter subclass, I should say, which is now out in Korea. It's like another support class you can play, but we don't have that yet, and we're still catching up a little bit in terms of content. But what he's just said there implies that what he hopes he could achieve is that we get the most recent version of the game around about the same time as Korea does, and then we can get a Loa-On, like a global Loa-On for ourselves, which that's like huge news, because I expected this game to always be like a couple of months or even like a year behind the Korean version. That's huge.
You yourself are a bit of a hot topic in the Lost Ark community.
He
yes,
is. I'm convinced this guy is the man.
You are popular within that community, so much so that players even bought ad space for you. And I believe we have that here to take a look at. This is a thing that happened, yes?
야, 이걸 또
He's so humble. This guy's great. I love Gold River already.
저희 한국 유저분들이 이렇게 힘내라고 응원해 주는 것 같네요.
Our Korean users had created this ad space for me, so it seems like, you know, we have their support all the way here in LA. So I'm grateful for it.
It's very true. And that relationship between a game developer and the community that you have in particular is so special. What do you think is the secret to having that kind of relationship with your community?
Absolutely, that's a great point, actually. Good question from this presenter here. But just to clarify, so the Korean players of the game bought ad space. I think it was in like a Korean subway or something, to basically say thank you to Gold River and the producers of Lost Ark for like doing such a good job. I mean, what an amazing proof that your game is doing it right than your fans going out of their way to buy ad space to thank you in a public setting. Like, that is wild to me. That really speaks volumes. Very cute.
And my hopes is that I aim to have that same relationship with our global users.
나중에는 이제
Let's be friends, Gold River. I'm here. Let's be friends. Please invite me to Loa-On.
축제 분위기도 내고 친해질 수 있는 시간이 올 수 있기를 희망해 봅니다.
And just like if you look at Super Bowl fans, everyone is connected with that common theme of just the love of the sport. And so just with that, we hope to have that same kind of energy for our Lost Ark fans and global users.
Damn, what a graceful answer. Sorry, I know I'm like gushing here. I know I'm gushing a little bit, but that was like such a graceful answer. I will say, so I touched on this previously in another video I made about why I was looking forward to Lost Ark, which I will link in the description below if you want to take a look at it. But one thing about Lost Ark is that it actually, it started off quite good. Like, a lot of people played it, but then it actually kind of dipped for a while. The game was in a kind of rough state, you know, in like season 1. They now call it season 2, but it was in kind of a rough state, and there were some kind of criticisms about it. It wasn't always smooth sailing, where everybody said that he was like the best game developer ever and Lost Ark was a super smash hit. They had to like really work at it. But I think a little bit like the story of Final Fantasy XIV, which I know a lot of you have heard of, having to maybe kind of work at it a little bit and really sort of like, if you really want to make a successful MMO and you're dedicated to it, you're not just going to like abandon it as soon as the player count starts to dip. Sometimes these kind of bad periods that he kind of touched on there are actually, in the end, a good thing. Because it keeps your developers kind of hungry for trying to improve the game. You get like good criticism and good feedback, so you know what maybe sucks for the players and what you could like do better on. And I think it says a lot here that he points out the fact that It's not always just people praising how wonderful that Lost Ark is. You know, they had to kind of earn it and work for it. Final Fantasy XIV went through a similar experience. I think World of Warcraft now, very late in the game, perhaps might be going through that a bit. Where World of Warcraft has been so successful for so long that it maybe hasn't had like a very good kind of like taking a few blows periods. You know, it like maybe needed to kind of have this moment where they're like, listen, if you don't treat us right as your players, we're going to walk, right? So you need to really think about this a bit. And it's maybe not necessarily a wholly negative thing for an MMO to have like a dark period and then learn from it and grow if they're in it for the long haul.
I love how much you listen to your player base, and it seems like you listen to the Korean community quite a bit. And I know you were talking about that you'd love to listen to the Western territories in the same way. Is there any feedback you've heard from the Western territories that you'd like to address?
설전이 벌어지더라고요.
Yes, I've been keeping up to date with the Reddit threads, YouTube, you name it. But I've seen on a Reddit thread that there was an ongoing debate on like whether T1 and 2 should come out or T3 should come out first. It's pretty heated.
So yeah, just to clarify again, that refers to like the tiers of content that came out. I think personally for me, a lot of people say that Lost Ark has hit its stride, and a lot of people really stick with the game when they experience the tier 3 content, and the game was still kind of finding its feet slightly in tier 1 and 2. It's still fun. Like tier 1 and 2 still has a lot of like fun fights in it, and it's going to be good to progress through it. But I know that they've probably had a lot of internal debate as to whether they should have tier 3 early or not. And I think although it's a little overwhelming how much content is in this game, I think it was the right decision, because this is Lost Ark when it's really hit its stride, and this is like the way that the game will probably be in the future. And I think to show off a version of the game that doesn't have that in it to the Western audiences would be like kind of not playing your best hand, you know? You want people to get the best first impression. So overall, I think it was a good idea.
2년 가까이 진행되던 구간이거든요.
And not to say that, you know, if you look at our original launch in Korea, it almost took 2 years for tiers 1 and 2 to come out.
근데 뭐 그렇게 길게
Wow.
즐기는 게 아니라 T1, T2.
That's a long time for the game to not have like a super huge amount of content, you know what I mean? Like I said earlier.
좋은 게임 흐름을 가질 수 있을 거라고 생각해요.
So through tier 1 and 2, you get the gist of the game, you get acquainted with it, and the real meat of everything is in tier 3. So once you go with that flow, it'll just enhance the experience, in my opinion.
I like hearing how he wants us to interpret the content, you know, what his plans are for it. I feel like this might be a potentially spicy opinion to have, depending on how much you like New World. I sometimes feel like New World is an MMO that was made because they were told to make an MMO, whereas Lost Ark feels like an MMO that was made because they wanted to make an MMO. So with New World, there was a lot of things very impressive about New World, but it was a little lacking in direction. And I think a lot of people, when they got to the end game of New World and they began to really pick apart some of the systems, they were like, this game is like a little weirdly all over the place. And there's some like glaring flaws in it that maybe should be fixed. I know New World has only just come out and Lost Ark's been out for years, but like I said before, with Final Fantasy XIV and New Lost Ark, there's this kind of like one person at the head is using a lot of their vision for how they want the game to go. And I know it's not very fair to say that a game is made by one person. It's not. It's made by teams and teams of very talented people. But I think having someone with like a vision to drive an MMO forward is really worth its weight in gold. And you can tell when an MMO is kind of flapping and they don't really know what to do with it and it's all over the place and it begins to annoy players really quickly. So I think it's really cool to hear like his vision for what he wants us to experience when we play certain types of content. For instance, what is the purpose of tier 1 and tier 2? He wants it to be almost like a tutorial or like an introduction to the meat of the game, which is tier 3, rather than leaving out tier 3 and have the tier 1 and tier 2 like pretend to be the meat, I guess, even though the game is like better in Korea. I love hearing his vision, you know?
Is there anything else you've seen discussed in the forums that you'd like to address at this point, maybe concerning DirectX 11, any of those conversations?
A lot of you guys won't know this because you might just be experiencing the game for the first time now. Originally, the game came out with DirectX 9, not DirectX 11.
Like there's a lot of conversations happening. I even saw a tier 3 growth chart that someone made. I was quite impressed with it. And there was a debate on DirectX, like when is it coming? And I've already resolved that and mentioned it in a prior engagement.
제가 한 분 언급해드릴 유튜버가 하나 있네요.
Oh, I'd like to make mention of this one YouTuber.
그 싸이오라고 그 2년
Sinow? No, just kidding. He's talking about Saiwo, who's been making content for this game for years. He doesn't mean me, sadly. Maybe one day he will.
Over 2-3 years, he's been just consistently being able to provide like such great responses for Lost Ark. So even for his sake, we want to continue living up to that hype and deliver what we created.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. He's like shouting out a YouTuber who, not in Korean, but for a Korean game, has been making content about Lost Ark for years before it even came out over here. So I think Gold River recognizes that, like, Saiwo, if that's how you pronounce it, or Siwo, I'm not 100% sure, which I'm sure you've seen some of his videos pop up on your recommended if you've been looking up Lost Ark information. Very, like, knows a lot about the game and has, like, done great guides for it. I think Gold River recognizes the fact that even though this was, like, a game that was only available in Korea for a very long time, the passion of Saiwo to make all these videos for so long and to wait for the game to finally come out over here is something kind of beautiful, and he's shouting that out. And that is, yeah, I think that would really, like, honestly, it would, like, make my whole year to get a shout out from the developer of a game that I covered like that. Make my whole life. My whole life would be made.
좋은 게임 같이 만들 수 있도록 노력할게요.
And to everyone here in this space, our ears are open for any feedback, so it is all welcome because it's only going to help us improve.
Small feedback. Where can I get this Makoko lamp? Please sell merch. I want this so badly. Look at it. It's so cute.
What are some of the interesting things you noticed watching Western region players? Have there been any differences?
몇몇 개 수정사항을 요청하시긴 해요.
Well, of course, there's existing variations among all territories, right? And publishers do, take that into account and make those variations.
그렇게 다르지 않아요.
But in my opinion, at the end of the day, it's not at all different across all gamers, no matter where you're from.
원어음으로 이제 보시는 분들도 굉장히 많더라고요.
And it seems like a lot of the viewers who are watching the show, they preferred the Korean language, the original language that it was in.
Yeah, so they have like a voice pack, for example, that you can download in Steam to have the Korean voices in the game as opposed to English, if that's your bag. I've been saying if that's your bag a lot lately, and I don't know where I got it from.
저희 정서 그대로를 최대한 드릴 테니까 재미있게 한번 받아주세요.
We're going to maintain the core of the game, so please receive it well, and we're looking forward to your responses.
So for those of you who don't know, I did a Japanese degree, and quite a lot of my Japanese degree was about localization and like how far you want to go with it. And I feel like a lot of people out there, including myself, we do quite like a somewhat pure experience. But I think this is like a very contentious topic for a lot of people. I think if you try too hard to make it like a one-for-one thing, then sometimes people might not get certain like cultural references and things like that because it doesn't register as true for them as it did in perhaps like Korean or whatever like that. So it's a balancing act essentially, and I try and keep an open mind when it comes to this stuff about a lot of different opinions, but I'm quite happy to hear that the back and forth between Smilegate and Amazon, it's not very like, it's not disconnected as much as I thought it would be. I actually had a real fear for this game that it would be like, Amazon is going to buy the rights for this game and then they're going to just like publish it, but Smilegate doesn't really get involved. They just like give them certain bits of code, they give them like certain versions of the client, and Amazon just does all the work it wants to, and Smilegate's just like, yeah, whatever, we don't really care, we're doing our own thing. Instead, it sounds much more like a kind of partnership where, for instance, Gold River has certain things that he has in mind as for what he wants the game to be, even outside of the Korean territory. I think that's really important for me, actually, that he is still part of the creative process, and it's not just like a very kind of hands-off thing. Like some Korean MMOs in the past, it's felt very like hands-off, like they basically just like give the client to the company, and then the company makes all the changes that it wants to, and that's it. So I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. We'll see how that pans out in the future.
I know you said you were here for the more tricky or maybe more sensitive questions as well. So I want to ask, what can you say to new players who might think that Lost Ark is pay to win?
That was a real humdinger of a question there. I thought this interview at first was going to be kind of a lowball interview where it's like, what do you want to say to everyone? Have fun. Okay, bye. What a great interview. But no, this is like, I'm really impressed with this interview, actually. Damn, this is like the question that a lot of people who have doubts about this game are probably wondering.
우선
I know
제가
he's gonna say
불편한 것도 다
this is a big one.
받겠다고 했더니 이거 진짜 넣어주셨네요.
This is quite a tough question. And
To that question, I say, get your credit cards out, you cheapskates. Start swiping.
과금을 하지 않으면 컨텐츠를 즐길 수 없게 만드는 부분들이죠, 바로.
in ordinary free-to-play, there's a structure that you come in without purchase to play the game. Then the obstacles come up for players and push them to spend dollars in order to advance or progress, right?
Right.
Even in Lost Ark, yeah, there may be moments where, it may be required or it may be useful to advance, but we don't provide or design obstacles so that you cannot go further if you don't spend dollars.
과금에 어떤 제약을 두고 있지는 않아요.
Whether you're exploring grounds, collecting items, or doing, exploring the terrains, it doesn't require items to be purchased.
과금의 부담이 좀 심해지는 부분들이 있긴 합니다.
Well, for those who prefer that vertical content and just want to quickly advance in the game, then yes, funds would be useful in that sense.
So a little swiping will help, but they don't want it to feel necessary.
And if I may, I would love to share an expert tip on how to best enjoy the game.
Don't go too fast. Just take your time.
The man, the myth, the legend, Gold River himself, the Giga Chad on the Giga Chad chair says, don't go too fast, take your time if you want. So if you're feeling like all your friends are absolutely like pulling all-nighters and they're getting ahead of you and they're already level 50 and you're feeling a little bit down about it, the man himself is giving you a pass to say, hey, listen, I'm taking my time, I'm enjoying it. Myself personally, I rushed to level 50 really quickly and I'm already trying to do a lot of endgame stuff because that's just how I want to play, but it's, yeah, there's a lot in this game and you'll get there eventually and stuff, So it's kind of cool to hear him say that. But touching on the monetization point really quickly, I think they've already made a couple of changes to the game for our version of it. For instance, the pet bonuses are less like you have to spend money on it to get the kind of buffs that you want or whatever. You just kind of get these bonuses when you have a pet now. It's a little bit more... well, it's less kind of money swiping required on our version of the game than it was in Korea, for instance. So they have made a couple of changes to make it a little bit less monetized in certain regards for us. But another thing as well that is important to remember, and I think sometimes people forget this when they're having conversations about this type of stuff, is like, this game is free. You don't spend any money to purchase it at first if you don't want to, and you don't pay a monthly subscription, right? So they have to get their money somehow. And for me, the monetization stuff in this game, although you can swipe a little bit to try and get you ahead, it feels like you can enjoy the game without really spending money on it, and you can get a very powerful character without doing it. And it's not like super grindy or anything. It's not like ridiculously grindy without spending like some money, in my opinion. I also feel like a lot of these MMOs that people compare a game like Lost Ark to, there's MMOs out there, like World of Warcraft has a monthly subscription fee, and it has multiple character services that can help you get ahead that are like ridiculously expensive at times. So it's like, if you want to make the argument that you would prefer to have an MMO where you pay monthly and there's no cash shop stuff in it, fine. But a lot of these pay monthly MMOs now also have stuff in it that can help you get an advantage in the game. So it's kind of like you're paying monthly and you're paying extra for this stuff. Maybe it's not such a terrible thing to have a game where you don't have to pay monthly, but it kind of like has a little bit less pretense in this regard. I know the level of monetization in Lost Ark is maybe more than something like Final Fantasy XIV offers, so this is definitely something that is like, your mileage may vary, your tastes may vary, but for me, I don't think this game is as pay to win as like some of its detractors would say, although it would be a lie to say that there's nothing like that in this game at all. It just, for me, it isn't intrusive enough to feel like an obstacle to the game. Plus, it's free. So maybe spending $10, $20 every so often for something in the game doesn't feel that bad, considering that I would be spending that in a monthly sub for other games anyway.
Also, Gold River, thank you so much for just earlier today, your trailer dropped with your commentary over it, and that was really cool. What is the story behind that trailer?
It's actually a really, really cool trailer. Yeah, it's very heartfelt, actually. It's quite a beautiful video. I'll link it below. If you want to sell the game to your friends, link them that trailer, because that's a really good one.
I want to ask you, I know PvP is very popular in Western gaming in general, and can you describe the PvP element that is in Lost Ark?
PVP가 중심축에 있는 게임은 아니에요.
Of course, I would say PvP is not, or Lost Ark is not built with the focal point on PvP.
그렇기 때문에
I think
이제
that's a fair comment.
시행착오를 걸치면서 좀 확장해 나가고 있어요.
But with the growing popularity in PvP, we're doing our best to fully gear up in improving those elements, whether it's improving ground or other aspects, including the island.
여러분들의 반응을 보면서 계속해서 PVP도 발전시켜 나가 보겠습니다.
We're going to continue monitoring everyone's responses with PvP and continue improving upon the elements.
Very honest answer there, because I think that this game has actually a really fun PvP in it. Like the actual just like kind of combat of it is really fun because it's related, I guess, to how fun the combat is anyway, because of the like kind of the real visceral action combat feel of it. But I feel like the PvP systems in the game, they could develop it more. And I think that's what he's kind of referring to here is like, although the PvP in the game is quite fun and they have a lot of like dedicated fans, they could maybe develop on it more. I'm not 100% sure on the details of this, but I think actually in one of the low-ons recently, they talked a little bit about, they want to add a continent that is about like open world PvP a bit more, and they want to focus on like kind of upgrading some of the battle systems for PvP and trying to improve the game in that regard. So I think it's great that he was very honest about the fact it's an area that they want to improve on, and they have actually got some ideas in mind as to how they want to improve on it, because although the PvP is fun, like I said, the systems for it could maybe be a bit more elaborate. There could be a bit more PvP stuff in the game. You might be able to find some information out there exactly about the details that they said, but I'm very sure that recently they talked about wanting to improve the PvP in the game. And there's a great YouTuber called Canon who's been making content for Lost Ark recently, and he's really into PvP. So if you want to learn more about that, I would recommend his channel actually.
As a game developer and a game development company, what is your global goal?
저는 목표를 이미 이뤘다고 생각해요.
I think we've already achieved what we set out to achieve.
오픈 베타도 하지 못하고 그냥 드랍되는 경우들이 굉장히 많거든요.
And if you look at the genre of an MMO, it not only requires a lot of time, but a ton of content as well as costs. And a lot of the other MMOs don't even make it to the beta stage or even launch.
It's really hard, I think, to make an MMO. It really is. I can see why a lot of game developers moved away from making MMOs for a while to maybe more making like online battle arena type stuff.
If you had to put a number on it, though, do you have a number in mind of users you would like to see for Lost Ark?
Okay.
집요하시네요.
Wow, you're quite persistent. But since you asked,
Number.
Number.
20만 하겠습니다. 20만.
I will put it at 200K concurrent users.
200,000 concurrent users. Let's take a look at the Steam DB for this game to see how many people are currently playing it as I make this video, shall we? So, before the game is even out yet, according to Steam DB, so the Korean version of the game isn't on Steam, Japanese and Russian versions aren't on Steam, 476,000 people are playing this right now. The all-time peak was 532k 2 days ago, and when it hits its peak, it goes up to about 500,000. I think it's safe to say that he's definitely achieved his goal of 200k. Of course, MMOs, over time, the drop happens, but I think Lost Ark has a lot of content in it and the game is good enough. The drop for this won't be as severe as some other MMOs that have come out. My man Gold River, you've absolutely nailed it, and I think the fact that this is only early access and it's already up at 500,000 concurrent players, plus over 1 million viewers on Twitch, game's popping, man. This game is absolutely popping off, and it deserves it. It absolutely deserves it. So, round of applause, Gold River. I hope he's just having like a great like party or something, you know. I hope he's having a great time somewhere, just celebrating his success for a little while.
스팀에서 굉장히 놀라운 성과를 이제 거둔 적이 있고.
Well, in the past, there is a Korean game named Battleground FPS, and that yielded great results. And as a Korean, I'm very proud of their accomplishment.
20만으로 이제 얘기를 드려본 겁니다.
And in a way, it seems like there's a wall, like with that 200K. It's hard to surpass that number. And so we wanted to set it at that and be able to surpass it, hopefully.
I mean, 200,000 is still a lot.
I think we can. And for chat asking questions about only 200,000 concurrent users.
Yes. Concurrent as in like how many people are on at one particular time, not like kind of people who regularly play a game like over a week or whatever, or over a month, but how many people are on at one specific moment. So if a concurrent player base is like 500,000, that's way more people who are like actively playing a game properly. If a concurrent player base is at like 500,000, then you could say that the amount of people who are regularly playing the game but maybe aren't logged on at that one moment is like way more as well. So that is huge, folks. That's really big for the launch of this game.
If you had to describe Lost Ark in one sentence, maybe for new players out there, how would you describe it?
If you had to describe Lost Ark in one sentence, how would you describe it? That's a really difficult question. It's the best game.
그렇게 나쁘지 않았다라고 할 수 있는 정도의 게임.
In 10, 20 years, looking back in Lost Ark and makes you smile. I think that's it.
That's it. That's beautiful. If you can look back and it makes you smile. Gold River, thank you so much. This conversation.
I mean, they are called Smilegate.
Do you think you have a couple more minutes to answer questions from the chat?
Of course.
Thank you.
From the
Thank
chat.
you so much for that.
That's
All right,
brave.
perfect.
When's Destroyer coming out? When's Lancemaster coming out?
At Unwise Foxy asked, what is your favorite class?
Oh.
I want to know. If he says any class and then all of a sudden the class is doing really well in the meta, people are going to be like, favoritism. Absolute favoritism. But he should say it anyway. I want to hear it.
No comment 하겠습니다.
No comment.
I'm not going to comment on it.
Oh, boo.
When will we get the female berserker?
Ooh, so this is another point that I'll just clarify very quick. As you may know, that they're starting to go through a process of gender unlocking certain classes by providing a different gender alternative to a class that usually, for instance, let's say for the martial artists. The martial artists are female, but they introduce the striker, which is a male martial artist, and this is a process that they kind of have been calling gender unlocking. There's only two in the game so far. There's the gunslinger, which is a female gunner, and the striker, which is a male martial artist. But they announced at the most recent Loa on that they're going to do a female berserker next, which is what this person's asking about.
여기서 굉장히 인기가 많은가 보네요.
Wow, she must be popular, huh? Of course, we have to monitor and perhaps at the end of the year or early next year.
I'll be playing one as soon as she comes out.
Perfect. And at
For sure.
SWEBear026 asks, Squid Game mode confirmed?
The PvP island, maybe.
뭐든지 가능성이 있습니다.
In this game, there is an island, and in that island, anything is possible.
Just what I said. Just what I said. Squid Game Island. Confirmed.
Other people in chat wanted to know if there was a way to play PvP with friends.
Right, so this is, when you do ranked PvP in this game, you can only queue up solo. It's 3v3, but you can only queue up as a single person. You can't queue up with your friends. I think normal 3v3 PvP, you can queue up with friends, but for ranked, you can only do it solo. I personally, it's just so much more fun when you can play with friends, right? So I would really like to see them do like a kind of group PvP queue or something.
그런 부분들은 좀 개선을 해나가야 될 상황인 것 같고요.
Currently, we're making improvements on that so that the
파티로
option
지금
is
파티로
available.
하는 거에 대해서 말씀을 하시는 것 같아요.
Nah,
파티로 할 수 없냐?
it seems like you're asking about the parties, whether it can happen or not.
고민해 보겠습니다.
So we'll take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think a lot of people would like that, myself included. I think I would prefer to do ranked PvP if I could sometimes play with friends. I know it can be frustrating to go against like duos or maybe trios if you're like a single player perhaps, but I think not being able to do it is a bit of a shame, and it would make me more motivated to do PvP more often if I could like queue up with friends and we can try and rank up together.
At Vern Ether asked, why change class names that were already in English?
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, so some of the class names were different in Korean compared to what they are in English. For instance, Blaster has become Artillerist. And I think some of them, maybe they thought it was a slightly, like, strange English word that they had used for it. Or, we'll see what he says, actually. I'll let him speak.
다 외워야 돼요, 이거를.
And of course, you know, we had that conversation with our publishers, and it seems like that was the direction we're heading in. So even for me, I'm trying to memorize the names that's in Korean with English. So of course, there were circumstances that led to this decision, but I personally also have wished that it stayed as is.
잘 협의해 보겠습니다.
But we will, of course, have that in check and see what we can do.
I prefer that they keep the names, personally.
Do you have any last words that you'd like to leave with our global audience?
Cheers. Thanks very much.
I believe that the genre of the MMO is something that needs improvement constantly. Of course, as I've appealed in the trailer and mentioned it, some of things that I look up to as well, Diablo and World of Warcraft, I have great respect for.
He's repping the games. You love to hear it.
그런 게임이 될 수 있으면 너무 좋을 것 같습니다.
And with everyone's encouragement as well as feedback, we hope to continue improving on, and perhaps even in 5 to 10 years, perhaps we could go head to head with these title MMOs. So we're looking forward to that.
네. I'll be waiting for you in Acacia. Thank you for your time. Let's play.
Let's play.
Yes,
Let's do
play.
it. All right. I've been told
Let's
that we
go.
actually might have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
Oh, bonus round?
From chat if we have those.
Sweet.
How often is new content added to the game? And I mean brand new, not adding to North Korea or from North America to North America from Korea.
근데 한국이
Not North Korea.
다양한 의견을 들어보고 다양한 고민들을 해보도록 하겠습니다.
So with taking our time into consideration of everyone's responses, we'll definitely continue building on it.
Took You Life asked, is there any point in the future that all regions will receive new content at the same time?
The dream, right? He touched on that a little earlier. Maybe they would need a lot of like really dedicated like localization, you know, like kind of permanent positions of like constantly localizing the content.
Of course, that's the dream. And with that meeting point where all territories are met, you know, that common ground, then we can even have like law on events as mentioned. And so that is something that we're aiming for too.
엄청
Sweet.
열심히 일해야 될 것 같네요.
We're definitely going to need to go full gear and then working.
Yeah, praise. That's going to be a lot of work, but that would be so good if we got stuff at the same time as Korea.
There you have it, fans of Lost Ark from around the world. We would, of course, like to thank our special guest, Gold River. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trisha.
Thank you so much for
What a
coming
legend.
on the show and
What a
participating
legend.
in this.
So I just want to say as well, not only thank you so much to Gold River for doing this interview and for giving some really like in-depth details, because I love hearing game developers talk about their games in depth and stuff. Like for me, it's like super fascinating. But also I want to say thank you to the host and the translator as well over here. I'm not really sure what their names are. I'm really sorry, but I think it was actually a really good interview by everyone involved and answering some of the questions from the audience as well. They did a great job of this, actually. It wasn't just like a kind of puff piece advertisement type of interview where it's like, oh, it's great. You know, it's like they actually really got into in depth with some of the questions. So hopefully this has been a really enlightening interview for you guys out there to get an idea about who is in charge of this game and what is the vision and the direction it's going to go in. And I hope you've enjoyed watching me react to it as well. I am very convinced by this personally. I know I'm super biased, obviously, but I'm biased for a reason. And the reason is because I think this game has an excellent man at the head of it. And I think it's got a really clear vision and direction it wants to go in. And I'm on board. I'm convinced. Let's go play Lost Ark. Fantastic. Regardless, I hope this video has been informative and fun for you guys to watch. And make sure to subscribe to me over here on Sinow, or follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/SinowBeats, if you want to see me playing some Lost Ark live and helping people out in the future with Guardian raids, etc. I would love to do more of that on Twitch, actually, coming up in the future. But thanks so much for watching. Once again, thank you to my Patreons as well. Really appreciate your support. I will see you all next time for the next video. Take care. Goodbye.